Hello, hello. Welcome to episode 49 of Wise Wednesdays with RK. The conversation today, my name is Ruqayya Khan and I am known as the Smile Strategist. I've been running these sessions since last year, May 1st to be precise. I am very delighted to share with you that our conversation today is on break free, declutter your life. We have on board our guest for today is Sahil Mehta, who is a strategic decluttering explorer, and he brings diamond grade clarity to ambitious leaders to scale their summit faster. He's a passionate mountaineer, a keynote speaker, an author, an entrepreneur, and above all of that, an amazing person to have a great conversation with. So, without further ado, I bring to you Sahil. Hi, Sahil. You mute.
It always
Yes,
happens, doesn't it?
yes, it's all right. It's okay.
Lovely to connect.
Same here. And thank you for saying yes. I know you've had your first in-person event today and was exciting as we were sharing before the show started. And in spite of the long day, thank you for saying yes to this conversation. I'm sure it's going to be of immense value to everyone who's going to tune in on the live and later on the replay.
Absolutely.
So Sahil, would it be okay if we jumped in to see the show reel a little bit, a tiny little video about what Wise Wednesdays is all about? Because for those who are new to this conversation, I think they would kind of understand where it's coming from and what's going on.
Let's roll with
Yeah,
it.
sure. So let's do this. And once again, thank you everyone for joining us.
Wise Wednesdays started on April 1st with a humble episode on forgiveness. Between then and now, we've had heart-led conversations on happiness, stress management, relationships, resilience, public speaking, respecting boundaries, self-discovery, mindset, just being, listening, reclaiming your life, intuition, and even food. I would like to thank all my listeners and the guests who gave me their time and trust. It is because of you that we kept going. It is because of you that we kept growing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so, so much.
There's a little bit of an echo.
I do hear a little bit of an echo, yes.
Yes. Okay, it's gone now. All right. So, Sahil, when I bring my guests over, I always encourage them to pick the topic. And quite obviously, with your book and what you're known for, it was kind of the obvious choice that you speak about cluttering. And that's why I actually invited you, because I really think there are so many of us right now who need to declutter. So, what does decluttering mean to you per se?
So, my definition of decluttering is declutter is nothing more than shunned confrontations. Right? It's things that we don't want to face for whatever reason, and we choose to shun it away, perhaps hoping that it disappears, perhaps hoping that things will get better. But guess what? If I have to use a metaphor, it's like having a ball and chain, this locked around your leg. You remember those old prison movies where they had that around their legs, preventing them
Yes.
from escaping? So
Yep.
we have lots of these wrapped around our legs, and we're moving around life, walking around, running, going through day to day, carrying this excess, unnecessary weight with us because we don't want to confront, either consciously or unconsciously, whatever that challenge is in our life.
Hmm. And on the flip side, there are also people who hold on to things because they may have emotional value to it, something that might be a memory or an anchor to an experience. So, what about those people who are holding on to things?
See, look, so the way that I position it is, if it serves a functional benefit in your life, keep it.
Hmm.
But if it serves no function or very minimal function, you may have to question, why do I have this? Now, that doesn't have to be something physical. It could be something that's occupying space in your mind as well. And I do want to highlight at this stage as well, because look, it's lovely to get that item that anchors you to a memory. It brings back all those wonderful feelings, or the opposite, depending on what it is. But the question then becomes, if that item is no longer there, maybe the dog chewed it, or your child by mistake painted all over it, or it's not that these things happen, right? Does that mean the memory goes away? No. The item was simply a trigger or an anchor, as you said, to get to the memory. It was a pathway. But just because that item no longer exists or has been partially destroyed through unfortunate circumstances, it doesn't take the memory away.
True. So when we look at decluttering, okay, and before we get further into decluttering, tell me about your journey of decluttering and why did you pick this topic as the subject of your book? Tell me a little about yourself.
Sure. So, I born and raised in Belgium. I've been fortunate enough to live across 5 countries in 3 continents. And by definition, when I say live, it means you have to complete an entire year in that country, right? So I have a very global outlook, and I've been now living in Dubai for the last 14 years. Now, life was pretty good, good relationship, family, in terms of health, wealth. I mean, you checked all the boxes, but something felt missing inside, And I didn't realize until the spring of 2016, I was on a trip with some very dear friends, and there was 8 of us in total. And so I turned to one of the friends when we're waiting at the gate at Barcelona airport, and I say, Vinny, we're going to Ibiza. How can we make this trip more magical? And he tells me, and we discuss, no judgment. And it was like this massive weight was lifted off my shoulders. I didn't have to be someone I'm not. I didn't have to impress anyone. I could just be me. And so we all took it literally. And the next 4 days were just filled with joy that was euphoric. And I'm going to share one example. We were dining at a restaurant called Leo. And Leo is one of these restaurants where they have various acts while you're eating. So they'll have magician, they'll have acrobatics, they'll have dance, singing, and etc. So we happened to have a table right next to the stage, and during one of the acts, the lady who was on stage dancing, one of the dancers, she points at me and she says, "Come up." And so I love to dance, but because of judgment, I would have shrunk in my chair. I would have looked the other way. But I said, hey, no judgment. Let's go for it. And it was a liberating experience. And so the remaining days were filled with such experiences. And as I'm coming back to Dubai, I said, Saahil, write this down, so you can share with your wife. And so I started to journal. And as I started to journal, tears started trickling down my face. And I said to myself, what's going on? I mean, this is not like you at all. And I realized that I couldn't recognize myself anymore because I'd been wearing so many masks and for so long. And the mask that I was wearing the most must be seen as Mr. Nice Guy. And by constantly trying to please others, I ignored myself. And that's where a lot of clutter started to develop in my life, knowingly or unknowingly. And so I said, enough. I'm going to make myself the number one priority now. And I'm going to identify and break free from this clutter one at a time. So this was a very personal journey, and it was never meant for sharing. But, one thing led to another, and then people started to notice a difference in me. They noticed a change in energy. They noticed, more aliveness. And they said, Saahil, what's going on? What are you doing? And share this magic food with us. What are you eating? And so I started sharing with a few people, and then one thing led to another. And then, a friend of mine, he comes up to me at an event one day and he says, Saahil, don't keep this to yourself. Share with people, because the world needs this. And that was kind of my aha moment. And I said, maybe I do need to share. And then that led to stages. That the next thing I knew, I was on a flight to Kenya, speaking in front of very successful entrepreneurs. And then I realized that I can't be everywhere, and if I want to really help and share, I need to write a book and share on social media. So that's when I started to kind of formulate everything, create a framework, a proper structure, which people could then follow and implement in their lives. So that's a slightly long answer to your question.
No, it wasn't long at all. And it was very inspiring because judgment, I think, is quite a clutter. And we carry it not just for others, but also for ourselves.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. If it had been any other moment, you would have probably shrunk in your chair, as you said. But because you had that relief of no judgment, you took on the opportunity, and you're okay to share as well now. I mean, as an example. So that's definitely something that we need to declutter with. What are some other things, other emotions that you think a person should declutter?
So, it's not about getting rid of emotions, right? I always tell people, and this is what I've learned, that emotions are, essentially energy in motion, right? And the question is, are you aware of your emotional state of being? Let me give you an example. I always say that we are like a horse and a horse rider. Okay. In general, we're the horse rider. So we're controlling the horse. We're saying go left, go right, jump, stop, speed up. But when our emotions, start to increase in levels of intensity, and it's not just the negative ones, right? It's not just like the fear and the anger. It can also be positive emotions. Maybe you just won the lottery or something, and you're just ecstatic. You start to become the horse. And now that control has been minimized. You can't control the horse. The horse is it's wild. It's moving in all sorts of directions, and you can't control it. And in many times, at least I'm speaking on my behalf now, I would look back and go, ooh, I wish I didn't do that. I wish I didn't say that. And so it's about being aware that I'm now transitioning from the horse rider to the horse. Let me pause, and through breath work, let me become the horse rider again. Right. So now I'm doing things more consciously, and I'm not reacting, right? I'm responding rather than reacting to the situation.
Yes. And I think it's also about what was I going to say? Great, I'm blank, because I like that metaphor. It's also about when you're driven and being a hyperachiever, right? When you're out to get a goal, and then the first goal isn't enough, and then the next one is the one that you're chasing. So as you said, instead of being the horse rider, you become the horse, because you're constantly chasing goal after goal after goal. Interesting, very, very interesting. I like this. Okay, we've got Brigadier Sushil watching us, and he says, I'm impressed by Saahil, gone through his entire thing with him. Best part of Saahil is his authenticity. Yes, sir, definitely.
Thank you, Brigadier.
Yes. So Saahil, we've looked at different emotions. Now, when I look at decluttering from decluttering things, and if I were to kind of just transition that, as in you're decluttering things from your space, and then you're decluttering emotions or thoughts from your head space. Sometimes when you're looking at things, you see something and you say, okay, I don't use this for this anymore, but maybe I could use it somewhere else. Something can be recycled or put into a different kind of a use, or changed. The purpose of it can be changed. Would that also equate when we look at the mind space perspective?
See, so when it comes to clutter, the key question you have to ask yourself is, and with anything, whether it's physical or mental, is this serving any purpose or has a functional benefit in my life? And maybe you have to change it, maybe you have to modify it, reuse it, recycle it, whatever it is. Ultimately, is it serving purpose or adding a functional benefit in your life? And if the answer is yes, then it's adding value. So keep it by all means, whether it's a thought or something physical. But if it no longer serves purpose or value, then you may want to ask yourself, then why am I hanging on to it? Because, as a mountaineer, I can tell you, if I want to reach my summit, if I'm carrying extra weight, which is not going to add any benefit, it's going to make my climb harder and require more energy. It's going to take longer. And I'm minimizing my chances of reaching the summit. So it's the same way in life. Whatever your summit of success is, whatever your definition is, if you want to get there and you're carrying all this extra stuff with you that's not really adding value, it's going to take longer, it's going to be harder, and you may not even make it there. So why would you want to limit your chances of success by holding on to things that don't give you any benefit whatsoever?
True. Makes sense. Makes absolute sense. I think the only mountain, I don't even know if it's called Mount Batur. So we climbed Mount Batur for the sunrise trek in Bali. That was my only, yes, it was my only experience of climbing and trekking. And it was fun because being the person that I am, with the kind of exercise I do, or actually not do, it was like you have to get there before the sun is out, right? And because it's so early in the morning, it was foggy, and then it also began to drizzle. So it was quite an interesting experience to trek. And I feel like the way you climb one mountain is the way you climb them all. Whether it's that mountain of success, whether it's a trek, and it's just your innate behavior patterns begin to show up. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they say, right, if you really want to get to know someone, they say travel with them. But I would say take it one step further. And I'd say, go climb a mountain with them, because that's when it gets raw, that's when you really get to know who the other person is.
I hear you, because I literally pushed my husband. It was so much fun. We'd gone on an anniversary trip, and he probably thought it's cheaper than going shopping, or she's happier this way. So we went on the Batur trek, and it was fascinating. The number of times I had to pause, and the number of times he just was by my side like this rock. I cannot tell you. It was beautiful. And the interesting part was we reached all the way to the top, and because it was cloudy and it was drizzling, and we saw nothing. We didn't see the sunrise. We saw nothing. I have a picture where I'm just looking at the white sky. And then I started playing silly, and I started blowing and pretending I was blowing away the clouds. And lo and behold, they actually moved. Anyway, that should be for another conversation. But tell me about trekking and mountaineering. Where does that come from for you?
As a child, I used to go to the mountains a lot, predominantly in the winter months. We used to go skiing. So I was very blessed that, living in Europe, a lot of the countries are very close to each other. Just like here in the Gulf, within an hour, you can get to many countries. And I don't know. I just fell in love. Maybe it's the purity when you're there in the mountains. Maybe it's it being more quiet. Maybe it's just bonding more with Mother Nature, or perhaps a combination of all of them. But there was something about the mountains that I just loved, and I had this dream as a teenager that, want to climb a mountain, and then when you think mountain, you think Everest, just because it's the tallest in the world. Now, Everest is a different ball game altogether in terms of time and dedication, but it was still the first mountain that we did. Now, I do want to highlight, we didn't go to the summit, but we said, let's go to the base camp of Mount Everest. Now, even the base is still 5,200 meters above sea level. And we ended up going a little higher than the base camp to a place called Kalapattar. And from there, we could see the Himalayan range and we could see Mount Everest in front of us. So we actually watched sunset on Mount Everest. And it was one of the most beautiful sights that I've ever seen. And, when you climb your first mountain, the mountaineers or the trekkers refer to it as the mountain bug. Once you get bit, you just want to keep going back. And so after that, we decided to continue our journey. And our is myself and my wife. And we've been blessed to climb another 3 mountains since.
Wow. Super. So when we look at your book and what you deliver as a speaker, tell us more a little about that, please.
My background in education is engineering. So, I just want to say that because for me, structure is very important. Now, this journey that I went on was, as I said earlier, was my own. But when I had to share, I realized that I can't share it in the order I went through everything. Because if I had to do it all over again, I would have approached it slightly differently. And I said, so let me create a framework. So I call that the Break Free framework that I've put together, which essentially focuses on 4 dimensions of life. And it's, first is the self, and within the self you have mind and you have the physical body. So that's two dimensions. And then the third dimension is people. And then the fourth one being the material world. So what I do is after talking about how to have a heightened state of awareness, how do you declutter from each of these 4 dimensions with the ultimate goal to break free from it so that you can soar to new heights and, achieve greatness beyond your imagination.
So you said mind, people, material, and self.
Body. Yes.
Yes, body. So would it be okay if we went through this
Let's
one
do
after the other? And for those of you who've joined us, please say hello and let us know where you're tuning in from. If you have any questions, please put them in so that we can make it part of our conversation. And where would you like to start, Saahil? People, mind, self, or material?
Well, let's cover it in the same order as the book, so we can start with the mind.
Sure.
And there's a lot that's been going on in the world over the last 12 to 14 months, and one of the things that we can't argue with is that there's a lot more fear, right? And this fear has kind of engulfed our planet, and what that's resulted in is a lot of worrying. And so I often tell people, because people are just more anxious nowadays, more stressed, that and I came across this concept, and it's like, there is no need to worry. And they go, what? You're crazy. And I said, whoa, just hear me out. Let me share. Do you have a situation in life? No. Easy, nothing to worry. Do you have a situation in life? Yes. Can you do something about it? No. If there's absolutely nothing you can do that's going to change the outcome of whatever the situation, the challenge is, then why are you worrying about it? Right? I mean, the only solution is acceptance at that point. And if you can do something about it, then why aren't you doing anything about it?
Precisely.
Right? And
Yes.
It's such a simple concept. But if you put it into practice, you'll realize that you're worrying when things you can't control, you remove that, automatically it goes down. And then for the remaining items, you put a plan of action in place, and again, it goes further down. And they're like, okay, I'm all right. So it's a simple tool, but very effective. So that's one of the techniques that I share when it comes to decluttering the mind.
Okay. And what about people then? And this is me playing the devil's advocate because I keep talking about, you know, toxic relationships need to be decluttered. So is that where we're heading with this one?
Yes and no.
Okay, tell me
so,
more.
so yes, to a certain extent. I mean, look, if there's a relationship that is toxic, it's not necessarily about getting rid of the person in your life. Because removing the person, just because you don't see them, doesn't mean that you can't get affected, right? You might
Hmm.
hear a song that reminds you of them. You might see someone who looks like them, it'll remind you of them. You might see a photograph. There's so many triggers that will potentially, um, you know, trigger various emotions in your mind based on that individual, that just distancing yourself doesn't make it go away. So I talk about decluttering people is in two segments. The first segment is, how do you neutralize the effect of someone who was previously pushing your buttons, right? Because they're saying something or they enter the room and you just, you feel it's something that's going on inside of you. It's horrible. But here's the thing, you're the puppet and they're the puppet master, right? They're controlling you. You had no control of your emotion. So you want to break that bond. And so it's about what can you do so that when you see them, hear about them, remember them, you feel neutral. You don't feel good, you don't feel bad, you're just neutral. So it's about that's the clutter that we want to remove. We don't want to be controlled by anyone else. And the second component that I focus on is with loved ones, right? I mean, how many members in your family or friends or community do you have where there's something that is not discussed? It's the unsaid, which has resulted in lots of assumptions and other things going on. And that has resulted in the relationship slowly distancing. And so it's about removing this clutter in between so that you can come back stronger and unite again. And so here's a simple example.
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead. You had a question.
I'm just very curious about how do you neutralize. So we can go back to that later, but please give us your example.
So a lot of times when you have that clutter between you and someone that you love, it could be because of acceptance versus expectations, right? A lot of people are expecting things of you, maybe you're not doing it because you don't agree, and then that's resulting in clutter. Perhaps it's, and I see this often in married couples, is that before marriage, you were an individual, you had your own journey. And after marriage, it's like you have to do everything together. No, you don't. You're still an individual. You're still, on your own path. You just happen to intertwine a lot because of the marriage. So everything doesn't have to be done together. Right? So, I mean, then we also have things like assumptions. How many times are people assuming things? No, you looked at me this way, so this is what it means. Or you said this, and that's what it... How about, why would I risk a relationship on an assumption? Because an assumption is based on my experience and or what I've learned in my life. And it could be completely different from what you added, this whole story in my head, and that's messed up our relationship. So why would I want to sacrifice potentially a relationship based on myself making up assumptions? All I had to do was ask, or question.
Right. Okay, so we've looked at clearing the clutter between two relationships, and I really want to go to the previous one because I know that it would definitely be helpful to many of us listening. And we also have Sir saying that I've tried this tool and it's highly effective. Thank you so much. Yes. How do you neutralize when, because it's difficult. We live in an age where you get notifications for everything. For example, Facebook memories. For example, Insta stories keep showing up, and if something has gone off, they do come back in your face, quite literally. How do you deal with that?
So look, people say, and just to elaborate a little bit of what I said earlier, people say that time heals, and I say no, time doesn't heal. Time just, uh, time just temporarily makes you think that maybe it's not there anymore. But there are triggers. There are triggers, and the puppet master is still controlling you, and those triggers are gonna keep coming. You can't escape them, and the only way to resolve it is to break that bond between you and the other person. And often enough, that comes through forgiveness, right? Something has happened that has made you feel the way that you do. And sometimes people tell me, "Oh, but why would I forgive them? They don't deserve it. This is what they did." But forgiveness is not about the other person. Let's just forget the other person completely. It's about you. I care about you. And so this is something that is going to help you. So let me share, a personal story. So back in 2009, I believe it was, a third generation friendship ended. And, without going into the story, the bottom line is, even up until 2018, it was still affecting me. Even though I had, wasn't seeing the person often, but when again, it was a photograph, a song, someone mentioning something about them, it was anything, but it kept coming back. And I said to myself, when I was on this inward journey, that what am I holding on to? Why am I not letting this go? And I really started to dig deeper into the art of forgiveness. And I realized that this is for me. It's not that I have to share it with them. I'm not going to go up to them and say, "Hey, I forgive you." But I need to let go. I'm carrying this huge weight around my legs, and I'm just taking it everywhere I go, and it's preventing me from reaching new heights. And so one day, and I recall this, I'm sitting in my, on my desk at the hotel room in Hong Kong, and it was during a storm that was going on. And so I had a lot of time to myself and to reflect. So I said, you know what? It's time to take action. And I said, I'm going to write a letter of forgiveness. Because we talked about energy earlier being, being energy in motion. And I had kept that negative emotion inside of me, and it was circling inside, causing damage inside my body, affecting my mental and physical well-being. Right? I mean, they could be enjoying life, they could be doing all sorts of things. I don't know what they're doing, but I'm still allowing that individual to affect me. It's crazy. So I got a pen and paper out, and I wrote down a letter of forgiveness. And at the end, after I finished it, I just felt this huge weight I'd broken free from. And in that letter of forgiveness, I didn't say you did this, you did that. I asked for forgiveness. Because I'm sure in every situation, there's always two sides, right? And I fail to believe that the other person had absolutely nothing to do with it. So for whatever I had done to hurt the other person, I forgave. And in addition, I always say there's no such thing as a mistake. There's always a learning. So rather than asking why me, I said, what did this teach me? And I realized that there's a lot of things since 2009 that I'd implemented in my life as a result of that experience. And so I was like, whoa, actually, not only am I now starting to break this bond and not be the puppet anymore, but I've actually benefited from what happened. I didn't see it at the time because I was too involved. It's like that a fish in the fishbowl. You're too close to it, and you have to step out to see in. And when I did that, I was like, wow, this has taught me so many lessons that I've applied. So this is a very strong technique that has worked really well for me and has worked really well for the people that I work with.
Thank you for sharing forgiveness. Yep, thank you. Thank you for sharing the story. And I'm sure people watching must have something that they're going through or have gone through. This is definitely going to help. I know it's helped me because I also have had a fallout with a couple of friends, and for a while I chased them. For a while, I was constantly asking, seeking for forgiveness, and I kept chasing after, literally chasing after. And then came a point when I realized that what am I doing and why am I doing this? Because I need to first forgive myself for whatever went down. And once I was able to do that, it didn't matter where the friendship stood or what happened, because I learned for myself how to respect myself in the process. Because as you rightfully said, you're then no longer the puppet. You take charge, you take control, you bring the respect back to yourself. You're going within. So thank you, Sahil, for sharing that. That was so helpful, insightful, truly.
Absolutely. And I'd like to share another one as well, because sometimes those triggers it's not even necessarily forgiveness, but it's understanding what the intention is, right? Sometimes people, it's just a character type. Someone is maybe more impatient, someone is maybe more brash, someone is maybe over caring and just constantly telling you how and what to do because they care so much about you. But you could easily take that the wrong way as well, right? You can say, why are you telling me what to do? Don't you trust me? Or this or that. I mean, so many things can come up. But again, it's what is the intention of the other person? Because I can tell you, I see this in families all the time, for example, between generations, where, like a parent loves his or her children, right? And so whatever the parent does is out of love for the child. Now, it may not come across that way for the child, because they're like, you also need to, yes, I have, I expect love from you, and I expect you to understand me for who I am. But if you take everything that the parent says literally, rather than go, okay, what is the intention? It can be very different as well. Because I've seen this, people just get triggered every single time. I'm like, and the funniest is when you see couples who have been married for like 50 years or 40 years, like, oh, my husband still hasn't changed. And I go, after 40 years, the fact that you still think he's going to change or she's going to change, that's it's hilarious. Like, you have to accept that this is who he or she is.
You need to flip that around and say you have your expectation of him to change hasn't changed in 40 years. So nice. And about what you said about parenting and being a mom of two young adults, I completely hear what you're saying, because it feels to me that when a parent is constantly making decisions for the child or constantly micromanaging, it's almost like you're holding these little birds that want to sprout their wings, they want to spread their wings, yet you're holding on to them because you're afraid they'll fall. And then you complain that they haven't taken their first flight. So it's like you're constantly holding, you're not letting them spread their wings. How are they going to gain the strength? Sometimes you need to let them fall, have a bit of a topple, get hurt, so that they learn that they can self-heal. That's so important.
That's so powerful, and I'm so glad you shared that. They say that attachment, it repels.
Yes.
Right? Too much attachment repels, and detachment binds. So
yes.
you think that you're doing good, but in fact, in many cases you're pushing away, because the bird, with the metaphor you use, wants to fly, and yet you're just keeping the bird in the cage because you want to protect the bird. So I love that. In fact, this is a great thing for the parents out there with who have children who are young-ish,
Yes.
and or young.
Yes. I work a lot with high school students and those who've just moved into university, because I feel that's the age where kids want to be their own self. They don't know the world fully, yet they feel they're cool or they know it all. So they're willing, they're kind of like literally struggling to flap their wings. And parents are also mindful of protecting them. They're not letting them. So I often see this when I'm working with my clients, and which is why I use this metaphor a lot with them about how this can affect the way they take decisions. And also it's so important to validate feelings, because if with a child you don't validate their feelings, how do they then kind of come to a place of understanding that their feelings are real? You know, because if every time you rubbish those feelings away and kind of say, no, you don't know, this is how it is, then they don't even know to connect with their own feelings, and that hampers them.
Absolutely. I would even argue that that applies to adults because, look at relationships where you have a husband and wife. If you don't allow or if you don't create a safe space in which we can openly communicate with each other without being judged, without, having to fear violence. And when I say violence, it doesn't have to be physical. It can be mental as well, right? Through foul language or raising your voice or whatever it might be, then it starts to create that clutter between the two of you, right? And so one of the things that is mentioned in the book that we speak about is overcoming confrontational conversations, or at least what in our mind is confrontational, right? And I'd love to speak on that a little more. And before, I used to enter a conversation in many cases with a negative state of mind. I'd enter with fear, I'd enter with anger, or I'd enter with resentment. And then I had this moment, I go, Saahil, how do you expect to have a positive outcome if you've entered the conversation with the negative state of mind? And so I said, okay, we need to switch this, because usually it's with someone you love, right? I mean, it's with a parent, a child, or a spouse, whoever it is, your best friend. And I said, okay, I need to enter this conversation with a positive state of mind. So I need to enter the conversation with love, with compassion, with empathy. Now I've increased my chances of getting a positive outcome, because it's not about me winning or you winning. It's about us getting closer together. So if I want a positive outcome, I can increase my chances by entering with a positive state of mind. And then the second thing is, I need to know and be very clear on what I want the outcome to be. And I highlight that from the beginning, because I've had conversations where I've gone in thinking, this is what I want it to be, and I haven't said it. And then something goes horribly wrong and it goes sideways. And I'm going, oh my goodness, where did this conversation just go? And I was trying to say, whatever. And now we're not speaking to each other for a few days. So, be crystal clear and communicate that. And then here's the framework that we agree to, especially when it's, let's say it's a spouse, we agree that there's not going to be violence. We spoke about that already, right? So no foul language and definitely no physical abuse. There's going to be no judgment.
No silent treatment in emotional tugs.
Exactly. So there's going to be no judgment. Let the other person be, accept them for what they're saying, and be grateful that you're able to have this conversation. It's not always going to be an easy one, and you may not like what you hear, but at least it's the truth. And point number 3, listen to the other person. Don't interrupt them while they're speaking. Don't listen to the voice in your head that is interpreting everything that they're saying. Don't listen to the voice in your head that's thinking of how to respond to them, but actually listen to the other person, right? Because people say, yeah, I listen. I go, no, you don't. Yes, I do. Okay, just repeat what I just said. And then they say something completely different. I said, see, you're not listening. But just by agreeing to this framework with your near and dear, you can allow for magic to occur, because you remove that, like I said, that clutter that's between the two of you, and you become stronger.
And I think at the end of the day, it's a relationship that is above everything else. It's not about the other person. It's not about you. It's about the relationship, and the reason you're working on it is because you value the relationship. So keeping that above all is so important. We've got Judith watching Sorry, we've got Junith watching. He says, yes, it's all how we decide in our mind and communicate. He's watching us from all the way from Bahrain. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I would take it even one step higher, and I'd say that beyond, and this is my personal perspective, maybe everyone doesn't agree, but I would say that health triumphs even relationships. And the reason for that is, if you really love people, you also don't want them to stress about you. You want, my mother told me one time, she goes, Sahil, the best gift I can give you is good health. Not ending up in a hospital, or having something which is a threatening disease or illness. It's just being healthy, and then one day you're not there anymore, right? You've lived your life to its fullest potential. And I thought to myself, and I said, you know what? That's so true. And by being healthy, it's actually a greater sign of love to everyone around me, because I don't want to give them that additional stress and anxiety. I don't want to be a burden on their life. And so by being healthy mentally and physically allows me to shower more love to everyone around me.
And by being healthy, you're respecting yourself. You're giving yourself love first. And because you're giving yourself love, the other person can see that and reflect that back to you. So
I
powerful.
love it. I love it. Absolutely.
Thank you. So we covered myself, we covered people. We need to now look at material. Is it material or?
Yeah, the material world.
Yes, please. Yes.
So we were climbing up Mount Kilimanjaro, right? This is the tallest mountain in Africa, and it was myself and 5 women, one of them being my wife. And one evening, while we were having dinner, I asked the ladies, I say, "What do you miss the most?" And without hesitation, all of them said kids. Not one said the husband. So
Oops.
so anyway, jokes aside, I said, "Look, forget people. What do you miss the most?" And the 3 most common answers were a warm bed, a warm room, a bed, and running water. And that's when it struck me. I said, wow, these are the necessities. These are the needs in our life. I keep saying, I need this, I need that, I need a new car, I need a new watch, I need a new computer, I need a new pair of shoes, I need a new tie. I don't need any of those things. These are all wants. These are desires. Right? I have my needs. I live in a world of abundance. I have food, I have shelter, and I have basic clothing. So I started changing the mindset whenever I went out of the house, saying, or even when I'm at house or in the workplace, and I'd start saying, I want. Not I need, because I had what I need. I had more than what I needed.
Right.
And something very interesting happened when I switched my mindset. All of a sudden, now when I go somewhere, I go, okay, I see this thing, shiny object, looks attractive, let me go check it out. Do I really want this? Is it going to serve purpose or function in my life? If yes, okay, let's buy it. And if no, then okay, we'll let it go. And by just having that extra layer of questioning, I realized that I was buying less. And then as I started buying less, 1, I saved money. That's a bonus. 2, I saved time because I wasn't going to shops as much as I used to. And when I freed up that time, I was spending it doing things that mattered the most to me, which was spending time with family and close friends. It was focusing on my health. It was enjoying hobbies that I'd given up for a long time and had resurfaced. I mean, you can fill it with whatever you want. But, we have everything we need. We live in a world of abundance, not in scarcity. And yet we constantly say, I need, I need, I need. When in reality, you don't need. It's a want. It's a desire.
I love that. the difference between need and want. I love this. And I like what you said about clearing up time, because when you clear up time, then you have more time. As if Brigadier Sushil is watching, he'll definitely jump in and tell us that yes, more time equals more freedom, and
Mm.
yeah, and you can use that time for whatever it is that you want to get done, or however you want to experience life. So, are you a to-do list person?
You know, I'm not a big fan of to-do lists because
A
it's almost like it never ends. And so,
very
you know,
context question, isn't it?
I mean,
Suddenly jump.
let me ask you this if this sounds familiar. You start a
Yep.
to-do list and you get things done and then you add, and then at the end of the week you're like, oh my god, I have more things on here than I did at the start of the week. And that doesn't feel good.
Nope.
At least it didn't for me. So I said, no, I'm done with the to-do lists. What I am going to do is identify my summit or my summits in life, right? And then every day I'm going to ask myself in the morning, during my morning routine, that what can I do today to get one step closer to my summit?
Hmm.
And I would list down one, two, or three, maximum four things that I'm going to do today in order to get one step closer or a few steps closer. And
Hmm.
now I was pretty much achieving everything that I had set out for the day, because it wasn't this ever long list. It was
Hmm.
one, two, three, maximum four things. And so, and I'm like, wow, I'm getting closer to where I want to go, which whatever my definition of success or my next summit is. And it felt amazing because now at the end of the day, I've done what I set out to do, which
Mhm.
feels good, right? You see, you've crossed out all the things that, rather than seeing lots of things that are still left. So psychologically, you feel victorious. So I wouldn't call it a task list, but I would outline what are my priorities for the day. And then I would do them first before I do anything else in the workplace, for example.
Brilliant. The way I do it is I mind map. So, like literally, I'm sitting at my work desk and my mind map sitting with me. So, I mind map and I work on each cloud with a timeline. So I know for sure that this is I need to by this time, kind of get this task done, this project done, and then I work my way backwards and have a rough idea. It's not about fixing it for a day or stuff like that. Of course, there are things that have to be fixed. For example, these interviews. So I plan them accordingly, and etc. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but yes, a good idea in terms of what needs to get done to touch that timeline. Sahil, I know you've had a long day, so what would you like to share with us as closing comments?
So I'd like to share a very quick story about a sailor who goes to the captain and says, Captain, when am I going to get my pay? And the captain says, come tomorrow. So the next morning, the sailor's all excited, goes running up to the captain, says, Captain, can I get my pay? And then the captain says, hey, didn't I tell you come tomorrow? So you see, tomorrow never comes. So, I know in some parts of the world, it's a little late, but make a commitment to yourself that, before the end of tomorrow, you've taken one tool that you've picked up from this conversation and you've applied it in your life. Just one thing. Because
Beautiful.
otherwise, it's like many things that we may have done, we get inspired or we say, I'm going to start this one day, and then it never happens.
True, true. I love what you said. And a lot of what you've said and shared resonates with my smile strategy. And we did discuss this earlier as well, because the smile strategy is S stands for silence the mind, M is manage your attention, I is identify the intention, let things go, and energize the possibilities. So it's which is probably why we connected so strongly when we spoke the last time. So thank you, Saahil, for your time. Thank you, everyone who joined in. Uh, it's been a very, very long day for you. And once again, I thank you for saying yes. And this was fabulous. Thank you so much.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of the day. If you're new to the platform, do subscribe, do support the host channels. And until next week, good night. Thank you.